Hi, folks. The Filipina P here, and it's time for your favorite segment, Mailbag Friday, where I answer questions directly from you guys about how to deal with the Filipina. Sometimes it ain't easy, and today I've got three perfect examples. We have a Filipina who can't stop gambling, a guy who's looking for an open minded woman, and a man who thought he found the perfect Filipina. But now he smells something fishy. This is gonna be a good one, so grab a bucket of popcorn or maybe a fish taco and let's get started. So the first email is from Trund in Norway. Let's see what Trund has to say. Hello, the Filipino P. You know you really don't have to be so formal, right? You can just use my first name, the. Anyway, he said, I've been dating the same Filipino for several years, and right now, I travel between the Philippines and Norway several times to be with her in person. I do love her, and she has mostly a good character, but I'm having a terrific problem with her that I need your advice. Like every Filipina, she's always out of money. But this should not be the case because I built her a sari-sari store that looks busy. I also decided to help to support her until I could move there permanently. And even if I don't give her that much, I give her enough to pay some bills and a little left over. But always she is saying, I'm out of money. I can't afford anything but food. So when I was there, I talked to someone that knows her and found out that she spends all her pesos on gambling. She plays a card game called Tongits with the people of the town, and she's always the one who's losing. She also buys the lottery, and the neighbor said that when she earns money from the store, she plays another game called Mahjong and loses it again. Now they say she pays her gambling debts with food from the store, and if she does not stop, I'm sure she will be out of business. I confronted her, and she denies this, but I know the truth. She is a real problem, but I'm far away, so what can I do? I don't want to end things with her, but this cannot go on. What if I asked the neighbors to stop gambling with her? Would they listen? What if I got her parents involved? And what about the government? Does the Philippines have any treatment programs for this? Oh boy, I'm really sorry, Trond, but this is actually a lot more common than you might think. And it's something I don't think I've ever talked about before. I don't know if it's genetic or cultural or what the heck the reason is, but it's true that a lot of Filipinos have a big problem with gambling. We tend to think we're eventually gonna win big, even when the math is against us. And an overly optimistic sense of hope becomes our biggest enemy when you start betting on things. We have cockfights, horse races, dice games, card games, scratch off tickets. And if you give two Filipinos enough red horse, it won't be long before they're betting on who can pee the farthest. Now, lots of cultures gamble, but when you combine games of chance with a lack of financial responsibility, you can wake up one morning and realize you just signed over the deed to your house based on a stream of urine. Even the term betting the farm can be taken literally. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but my grandmother lost the family's little piece of farmland after losing a game of Tongits, which is kind of like rummy. And she died just a couple years later. So yes, it's a real issue here, and it's getting even worse with all these online gambling apps where you can bet with real money. Anyone with a phone, which is everyone, can now ruin themselves financially without ever having to drink beer and unzip. So, what can you do about your situation? Well, I can tell you what not to do. Don't bother trying to convince the neighbors not to gamble with her. She's exactly the kind of person they're looking for. And she's probably never going to admit she has a problem. That's just not the Filipino way. So, you're going to have to threaten to cut off all your support until she agrees to get some help. If she lives outside the big city, the best place to turn would be an online support group like Gamblers Anonymous. I'll put the link in the description box. Once you get here, you'll want to handle all the money yourself. And no matter how she begs and pleads, never give a Filipina a credit card. That's like giving a teenager a loaded gun. And with someone like your girlfriend, it won't end well. And I definitely wouldn't get married until she's completely reformed. Because if the wife runs up a bunch of debt, the husband is so responsible. If she wants to change, she will. If she doesn't, it might be time to say goodbye. I wish you the best, Trund, and you can bet on it. So our next email is from Brett in California. Brett writes, so back in May, hey now, where's the greeting? No dear Miss P or anything? At least the other guy called me the. Anyway, he said, I asked for your advice about my girlfriend, and while it was very hard, and still is hard for me, I broke up with her. I still care about her and miss her, but I didn't see us being happy together in the long term. Thank you for that advice. But now it's been a few months, and since I really don't like the singles life, I was watching your videos and I got to thinking, how can I find a Filipina like you? I don't mean a YouTuber, since I'm an introvert and a very private one at that. So fame is nothing I'm looking for. What I mean is a girl who knows about Western things like Star Trek, sci-fi, technology, and things of that matter, like you do. Are there any other Filipinos like that over there? I plan on going to the Philippines in a few months, and I'm sort of lost on where to start my search for the love of my life. I know I won't have any problems meeting lots of beautiful Pinay girls, but I'm not just looking for hookups. I want to meet my special someone. And I've never talked to a Filipina quite like you before, so where do I find her? Thanks in advance. Well, Brett, I think you're making a huge mistake, but despite your lousy taste in women, I'll do my best to help. Now, first, let me remind you that I'm actually an introvert too, despite having to be on camera and doing things I'm not always comfortable with. A lot of people don't really understand the whole introvert-extrovert thing, but it has very little to do with being shy. If you feel energized by a group of partygoers, you're an extrovert. If you feel drained after being around other people like I do, you're probably an introvert. Anyway, what I hear you saying is that you want a Filipina who's kind of a nerd and who's more likely to read Isaac Asimov than make a TikTok video on the dance floor. And let me guess, you've talked to plenty of Filipinas who tick almost every other box, but you still can't find one that shares your interests. They're polite, they're caring, they're loyal, but they never ask the one question you want to hear. For a guy like you, it's a question that separates the good women from the amazing women, and you almost never hear it from a Filipina. The question is, what if? What if everything in the world was the exact same color? What if we're all just dreaming right now and when we wake up, we're someone else? What if clothing was never invented? Would guys still want to stare? Not everyone thinks about that kind of stuff, and I bet that's what you're looking for. But sorry to say, that's not easy to find here. Filipinos are mostly concerned with the problems right in front of their eyes, like putting food on the table and getting clothes on the backs of their kids. We only look at the sky to see if it's gonna rain, not to wonder about the stars. That's not to say you can't find what you're looking for. But to be honest, most of the Filipinas that fit your description are very young city girls who came from wealthy families, and most of them wouldn't be interested in dating an older foreigner. So what's your best option? Well, about the only thing I can tell you is that there's no particular place to look, because it's more about personality than geography. Look for a woman that asks a lot of questions and seems curious about your life and your background. Don't try to test her sci-fi knowledge or ask her what she thinks about the multiverse, or she'll probably feel inadequate and go quiet on you. Instead, look for someone with an open mind who's interested in what you have to say and hungry for more. All you need is someone who's willing to learn. I know that's kind of general advice, but sometimes that's all I got. Good luck in your galaxy quest. And remember, never give up, never surrender. So now it's time for the email you've all been waiting for. Charlie from Cavite. He said, Dear Miss P, see, that's how you do it, guys. I have a very embarrassing question. And I promise I'm not just asking this to be provocative. This is a real problem, and I desperately need your help. Uh-oh, If I were talking about any other Filipina, I'd probably just date someone else. But I really love this woman, so I have to find a way to make this work. So let me explain. I dated my girlfriend for a few months before we moved in together, and all during that time, everything was fine. But once we started living together, she could afford a new diet, and it might have nothing to do with it. But that's when the problem started. She used only to be able to afford mostly rice or sometimes a little pork with it. But now that she has access to better food, she's eating fish with almost every meal. So what's the problem? Now she stinks. Down there. It's not just any stink. It's a stink that should be used as an alternative to lethal injection or the electric chair. It honestly smells like something crawled up there and died. I don't want to just come out and tell her because I know how sensitive Filipinos are. But so is my nose, so I have to do something about it fast. I've tried pretending that the horrible smell is coming from somewhere else, and I asked her what it could possibly be. But she says she can't smell it. How can she not smell it? I'm no longer able to perform, and even the memory of the odor puts the turtle back in his shell. It's destroyed our love life, and now I'm just avoiding sex altogether. Please help. Holy macro, Charlie. Your situation really stinks. Something's definitely rotten in Denmark. But could it really be the fish? I figured that wouldn't have anything to do with it because smells like that are usually caused by bacteria or sometimes an infection. But when I looked it up, I got a real surprise. Foods like eggs, beans, and fish contain a chemical called trimethylamine, which is broken down by the body and released through urine, sweat, and bodily fluids. And what does this chemical smell like? Fish! So your theory might actually be correct. The only way to be sure, though, is to see a doctor, and that's where it gets tricky. Now, I normally advise people to just come right out and say what's on their mind. But if she really smells like the tail of an old fisherman, you might need to use a little extra discretion. A dead fish in the bedroom is certainly no fun, and neither is getting a stinky shrink-a-dink every time you're intimate. But if you just blurt out that she's got a dirty fish bowl, she's gonna get really embarrassed and she'll probably clam up. Now, how you proceed is up to you. But if you really want to be as tactful as possible, here's what I do. If she's only been able to afford basic food, then I almost guarantee she hasn't been to a doctor recently either, and she's gonna need one anyway. Insist that you take her for a routine checkup. And before you go, write a little note that says you suspect your girlfriend has vaginosis and ask that the doctor quietly be informed and the note thrown away. Pass it to the receptionist when your girlfriend isn't looking, and then you won't ever have to say another word about it. Now, some of you might think that my advice is a little too complicated, and you just tell her she stinks. But depending on her personality, this could actually be so traumatic that she'll never forget it, and you'll end up feeling guilty for causing her so much embarrassment. But no matter what you decide, the important thing is that you solve the problem and save the relationship. No more getting fish fingers and no need to throw her back. Just good eating. Well, that's it for this episode, and I'll be back next Friday with another mailbag. I've gotten more emails than ever before, so keep them coming. Till then, folks. If you think about it, I'm kind of like your stewardess, making sure you stay in an upright position during the video and guiding you to the exits. The exits of all your worries about life in the Philippines. The captain has asked that you give a thumbs up on this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you're on time for your next departure. If you really want to be the wind beneath my wings, check out my Patreon page for extra content and exclusive videos and features. For your entertainment, we also have a selection of other in-flight movies for you to enjoy. In the case of an emergency landing, place your head between your knees and kiss your ass goodbye. Have a nice flight!